Genesis Noir is a puzzle-based adventure game from Feral Cat Den and published by Fellow Traveller. It places you in the gumshoes of the Nomad, a hustling watchmaker who gets into a love triangle and has to deal with the violent reaction of her jealous lover as he tries to stop him from shooting her. Well, on the surface that's the story. There's an awful lot more going on here. Really, it's the story of the birth and possible death of the universe told through the prism of a jilted love story between a trio of cosmic beings. Yeah, like I said, there's an awful lot more going on here. Let me try to explain. Imagine an astrophysics seminar where time, energy and mass are made into characters put into a 1920s noir detective setting where time seduces mass behind energy's back and has to create a black hole in order to stop a bullet from killing his lover. To create this black hole, time moved through various stages of the creation of the universe and life on Earth, which was created by the bullet, in order to collect golden springs so that he can harvest their energy to create the black hole. Yeah, that's probably one of the better explanations of the game's plot that you're going to get, and it's still not fully right. No Man's journey through the eons takes the form of a number of vignettes, each with their own theme and ending. These are usually a string of puzzles, all referring to a central theme, for example putting together the blocks that would form the first amino acids that combine to form proteins in a primordial ocean, or progressing through an orchard to plant seeds that would eventually sprout and grow into stars. At the end of each section you'll attain an item that will give you the spring or the spring itself. Then it's back to the scene of the crime to delve back into the newly birthed universe again. The whole story is told in an almost comic book-like style, with each frame and each scene transition blending into one another. The monochromatic palette and varying art style influenced by a number of different art studios is absolutely gorgeous and keeps the game visually interesting and detailed. Each of the differing landscapes and characters are beautiful to the point where you almost resent the game's pace as it zooms by these with reckless abandon. There's no world to explore or striking scenes to dwell in or even to return to. You flash through them and then they're gone. I don't see any of this as a bad thing, however. Modern game design seems to be built to interminably hammer home its more visually indulgent scenes, practically screaming at the player, look at all this pretty stuff we put together for you, aren't we great? To see a game like Genesis Noir show you some of the most ludicrously detailed and lush scenes you'll ever see, and then just whip them away from you like a magician with a tablecloth, only to hit you with another set piece, seems almost decadent, but in the best way. If the artwork is decadent, then the sound and music design is downright Caligula. Each and every mouse move and click has its own chime, and the jazz-heavy soundtrack is simply excellent. If you're into Coltrane, you'll be buying this soundtrack. Also, how the mouse reacts to the surroundings is really novel. Knocking over books and vases off shelves, as well as popping bubbles when you touch them, really reinforces the notion that the cursor is a part of the game, rather than just a pointer floating over top of it. Sound plays just as much a part of this game as the visuals. With not a single spoken word of dialogue and very little story, it's up to the sound and visuals to guide the player through the game. This is especially true of the puzzles. With no hint as to how you're meant to progress, you're forced to rely on just pressing buttons and attempting to manipulate everything just to see what it does and how it all fits together. Which brings me to some of the negatives of Genesis Noir. With the game taking so many risks and experimenting so much, it's bound to lose a few potential fans by the wayside. I reckon at least 1 in every 5 people who end up playing Genesis Noir will actually end up hating it. And that's a pretty bad strike rate for a game with this level of quality. The confusion rooted in the puzzles will be central to this. To even call a lot of them puzzles is a bit of a stretch. Most of the time you're just going through the motions. You're in your room, there's a phone, you've only got one phone number, so you type it in. But you've no idea why you're typing the number in at that time or whose number it is. You later find all this out in a kind of delayed purpose writing, which, while this works great in novels and films, it doesn't really work well in games, as the gamer needs that sense of purpose to figure out what to do and why. A lot of the puzzles also feel like padding. The ones that aren't don't tax the brain due to their complexity, but due to the minimalist design, making it difficult for you to figure out what it is you're even meant to be doing. The issue was doubled up by the fact that, with the rest of the game flying by at breakneck speed, running aground on a puzzle because you can't figure out what cell combination will result in the needed creature to progress up a wall to mate for the 3rd fucking time in a row, really causes the game to drag. The other main negative of Genesis Noir is the lack of any real interactivity for large portions of the game. In a game where there's such a variety of actions, including a freeform jazz improv section where the music you play ends up building an entire civilization, which has to be one of the best musical sections in any game ever, having large portions of the game where you're pressing a single button just feels like a real letdown. This is a particular issue towards the end of the game. Thankfully, I didn't find these issues to be very off-putting, but I know a good handful of people who regularly play adventure and narrative-heavy games who would love this, only to be put off by the issues that I've detailed. Which is a shame, because this is a fantastic game with a brilliant and very well told story and utterly stunning visuals and sound. It's a game I cannot recommend to everybody, but I will literally never stop recommending to everyone.